How's it going? I'm Judd Lienhard, speed and performance coach. Today I'm going to go over the 5 steps that you can do to structure the perfect workout. We're going to go the slow, the flow, the go, the grow, and the show. Let's get into it. So a lot of people when they warm up, they forget how important it is to find and create ranges of motion and control the variable and force that normally people forget about. They're normally pretty good about not going super heavy at first, but they tend to go way too fast in their movement prep. So that's why I named the first part of my workout structure or training structure the slow, to emphasize the importance of slow movement that progresses both in speed and in range of motion. So the first part of I'm going to assume you're going to be working out for about an hour. It's going to be the slow. It's going to take 5 to 10 minutes. And the purpose of this portion of the workout is to prep your tissues and explore movement, to find movement pain and limitations, and hopefully improve those by working through them slowly. So a big important part of this is to limit range of motion first. So let's say you're going to be doing a lunge pattern that day or a squat pattern. You're going to start with a lunge type motion. You're going to go down until you feel tightness or pain. And a very important part of that is to hold that position at that joint angle that is causing you the pain for about 30 to 45 seconds and see if that pain starts to get better or worse. If it gets worse, then that's an indication you need to adjust your training for the day. But if it starts to get better and you start to feel some range of motion open up, that's an indication that you can then go and explore a deeper part of that range of motion than holding that position as well. So normally I will have the slow movements kind of mimic what I'm doing that day to some extent, the movement patterns, making sure that I increase speed of motion and range of motion gradually over the course of that 5 minutes, okay? Important things to cover when you're doing your slow are the 7 basic movement patterns, things like push and hinge and lunge, horizontal and vertical, row, but also basic abduction, adduction, internal and external rotation. So this is adduction. Technically it's transverse adduction. So this is adduction. Okay. Abduction is the opposite of that when you move something away. And then the internal rotation is this. External rotation is just the opposite of that. Okay. So along with the pushing and rowing, you want to make sure you're working some internal, external rotation. That's not as hard to do with the upper body because when we push, we also tend to transverse adduct, and there's a lot, and we can internally rotate while we push, and we can also externally rotate. So unless you really want to work on your shoulder mobility, you have a shoulder issue, it's not as crucial that you do that all the time with your upper body, even though I would encourage you to do some additional external rotation. But with your legs, we don't normally get a lot of that in our squatting and our lunging. We get a little bit, at least we should, but for the lower body, we really have to focus on adding that into our movement prep prior to our workouts, and then the abduction, adduction piece in order to assure that our hips are really ready to go. So all of the major movement patterns plus abduction, adduction, internal and external rotation. And then the final piece to the slow is you really want to make sure that you're doing a lot of spinal rotation and flexion, both on the sagittal plane and on the frontal planes here. So, either the rotation or maybe at first you do anti-flexion or anti-rotation with things like Pallof presses, and then you can start getting into some slow coiling and slow flexion, things like that. So a lot of times, you want to work that spinal flexion into full extension. That's all part of the slow. So any movement that fits into that is going to be a fitting exercise that you can plug into the 5 to 10 minutes of that slow. Okay, here's an example of a slow that I really love. Just take about an inch wide or thick band, anchor it above you and behind you. Put this in your armpit here. First of all, just that tension here is going to help open up your shoulder caps a little bit. And then you're going to get into a lunge position facing away. So especially if you haven't moved yet today, that band is going to create, in essence, an assisted lunge for you. And it's cross pattern. It's going to pull back on this side while there's tension on the opposite side of your body. So you're going to go down into that very slow lunge and you'll feel it pulling here. So you get that anterior sling going, working to a nice range of motion. The assistance helps you stop without excessive fatigue. And I call it scrubbing. So you're going to kind of scrub the joint up and down wherever it hurts. Go into a full range of motion here As the band stretches, it gives you even more help at the bottom where you'll probably need it a little bit more. And then what you can do here is kind of pull this band across the body so you can start getting some of that torso rotation I was talking about here. All right, and if you're doing a total body that day, you can even hold this position while you start to get that shoulder warmed up a little bit. And then what you can do is you can go back. Now, from the same foot position, you can then hinge over this front leg to kind of get the tissues of the hamstring prepped a little bit. And then you can then push back on this back leg here to get the calf tissues prepped a little bit. So that kind of covers a lot of different areas of tissue prep in one movement where you don't have to change and try to target all those things specifically. Okay, the next section of the training is what I like to call the flow. After the slow, it's another 5 to 10 minutes of your time, 15 if you want to take a little bit more time, it's fine. But the purpose of this is to prep your nervous system, start to practice your movement patterns, and the movements should be a little bit faster in nature. They should be ground-based, multi-joint, and they should blend the movement sequences together. That's very important. So they shouldn't be incredibly hard though, even though they're faster. You should break a light sweat, but it shouldn't feel like you're putting out a lot of exertion yet. We're just up in the ante just a little bit. So good examples for these are things like I'm doing right now, like the rope flow. It's nice and kind of gets your mind right for the movement as well. And I like to, at least at some point in the flow, do things that incorporate some kind of impact training, especially if you're going to be doing running or jumping. But also it helps to prep the tissues and the nervous system. So something like jump roping, A skipping, C skipping, pogo hops, something like that. So, after the slow and the flow, by that point, you're about 10 to 25 minutes into your workout. And I know that seems like a long time, but as we age, those two things become very important. And just doing things like this will get your heart rate up and help you build athleticism in and of themselves. Good. A great option for the flow section of your training are something I call pogo hops, or that are called pogo hops. And a lot of people, when they do jumps like this, what they try to do is they try to use their muscles to jump. And that's fine for different reasons. But with the flow section, you're going to want more of an impact. So you're going to want to I always tell my kids, try to jump without using your muscles, just the tension and elasticity in your system. So you're going to try to keep your toes up. I always tell them there's short cans in front of them, and they're trying to crush those cans with the balls of their feet. Once you get better, you can start to use your hands, but just to simplify things, keep your hands close to your midline, create tight tension in your ankles and your knees with a very slight bend in your knees, and just try to bounce off the ground here without a lot of dorsa and plantar flexion, trying to keep your toes mostly up in dorsiflexion so that you keep tension in your tibialis anterior. And then you can even start to do multi-directional. So you go back and forth or a little side to side. Seems like a very simple drill, but it reaps a lot of benefits, especially as we get older, for bone density and getting our nervous system firing, get us ready to go. Okay, now we're gonna get into the section of the workout that I like to refer to as the go. Now, these are gonna be the movements that you would traditionally think of as athletic type movements. They're designed to increase or enhance athletic ability through balance, coordination, proprioception, and both the capabilities and the expression of power. Okay, so you wanna pick movements, either using your body weight or a weight that's usually light enough to where you can do a fairly good movement speed with it. These movements should be challenging, but you shouldn't do them to exhaustion. So you should be a little fatigued after the to-go section, but you should still feel like you have a lot left in the tank to do some good training later in the workout. So there's 5 elements to the go that these movements, as you select them, you want to make sure that they contain at least one of those 5 elements. So you want to make sure they're either cross pattern, which means that opposite sides of your body are doing different things at the same time, and that you're having to transfer that tension across your midline. You're going to want to make sure that they're maybe unilateral, so you're doing one side of your body at a time, so you work that frontal plane stability. Speaking of that, you're going to want to make sure maybe that 1 or 2 of them are multi-vector or multi-planar, so you're not just working on the sagittal plane, but also the frontal and the transverse plane. So, if you're doing let's say a split squat, you're also rotating around your body or something like that. Or if you're doing a split jump, you're doing some spinal rotation so you can get that transverse plane going. You're going to want to make sure that some of them are what I call open system. Now, You notice I didn't say open or closed chain. I don't really love to use those terms because I don't feel like they carry a lot of benefit to real world application, even though I guess it's important to understand what those concepts are. I like to use open and closed system, and that is a concept pulled from general physical science. Closed systems just exchange energy with their surrounding environment, where open systems exchange both energy and mass. So what does that mean for us? It means that we're throwing something, we're leaving and landing on the ground, we're striking something, or we're catching something and having to absorb force. So we're exchanging both energy and matter with our environment around us. And you'll notice as I go through these, that these movements usually have one of those capabilities. So I'm either throwing something, I'm landing on something, I'm leaving the ground, it's unilateral or it's cross pattern. So, a good example of this is something like the simple jump up. It's good to start early in your go section. So you're going to load here like you're going to do a step up, but you're going to come up with so much power that you leave the ground enough so you can switch feet at the top. And notice you can do this very slowly. If you're old like me and you got like creaky joints, right? But then once you start to get warmed up a little bit, you can start to add a little bit more power and a little bit more fluidity to it. And notice the only way that I'm able to do one rep after another is I don't let my knee drift past back behind my ankle. So if I jump up and see how I let my hips go back, then too much weight lands on my back foot. I have to position my knee so I can go into the next jump. So it kind of teaches you, that goes into the proprioception and coordination, where you need to keep your body line and where to keep your hips as you're doing those jumps. And this goes into that basic athletic development that we talk about. Now I'm going to do it the wrong way. Watch. See, I let drift back. I lose my balance. See that? You got to keep your hips right aligned with that ledge so that you can stay fluid. So that's just one example of a great go movement. And notice it's open system because I'm leaving the box and having to reestablish contact. It's cross pattern because one leg is extending and one is flexing. It's unilateral because I'm doing one at a time. So it checks a lot of those boxes that I was talking about. So that's good run out of the go system. I don't know why I'm so out of breath. That's pretty pathetic. Okay, so by now we're anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes into the workout, and we're going to get into the grow phase. Now this is the phase, and by grow I mean strength. This is the phase that people normally associate with weight room training, right? So your big lifts, your big three, squat, bench, dead, usually bilateral, very heavy, north of 70 to 80% of your 1 rep max kind of things. Now, how I differ here is that I don't believe these have to be done using free weights. You can, and that's totally fine. I'm going to do it today. But if you have machines, as long as you are stabilized, which actually enhances what we're going for here and lets you push really hard to generate a lot of force onto your tissues, they still will serve the purpose of increasing force capabilities and expression. Okay, so I push back against some of the free weight purists out there, but free weights are fantastic and probably preferred overall. So, commonalities here though is that they should be stable, multi-joint, preferably ground-based in some way, and pretty heavy. The reason a lot of you will be like, wait, you've been working out for 40 minutes now, up to 40 minutes, and you're only allocating maybe 20 minutes to this section, and that goes against what a lot of you may believe. But my theory there is, especially as our training age advances, we don't need to dedicate as much time to the grow section. As long as we're dedicating a lot of intensity, we probably need to start dedicating much more time to the slow, flow, and go sections. But if an athlete is very young, yes, you might want to reconsider that. Spend a little bit less time on the slow, maybe a little bit less time on the flow if they're already fairly athletic and in sports, and dedicate more time to the go and especially the grow. But I'm mainly talking to older athletes like myself. I normally spend about 20 minutes doing this if it's a total body workout or something where I'm trying to touch all the bases in one time. Okay. So one of my favorite movements for the grow section are cheat rows. where I cheat a little bit by using my hips, but mainly my torso is at about a 45-degree angle rather than more of a 90-degree angle that you'd want to use for strict barbell rows, which are fine too. But that allows you to use a lot more weight and get your traps a little bit more, and then you can overload the eccentric a little bit better. And it's also kind of a total body exercise in that it really does work your posterior chain really well and not just your back muscles. So normally start on the ground here, pull it into me. I normally stand up fully before I start my rep, and then I hinge down into it just like I'm going to do a deadlift. And you notice how I wasn't trying to hold the contraction. I was just exploding it up and using that cheat to overload the eccentric. So it's kind of a rapid movement. You know, I probably could do this strict for a few reps, but definitely would be much harder for me. And this way I get to add additional reps and overload the eccentric. Okay, so we're getting to the last section of the training session now, which is called the show. So far we've done the slow, which preps the tissues, the flow, which preps the nervous system and the patterning, the go, which builds athleticism, coordination, things like that, the grow, which builds muscular strength, systemic muscular strength also. And now we're getting into the show. And the show is something you should dedicate anywhere between 5 and up to 20 minutes if you want to. And think of the show as more single joint and or hypertrophy focused training, where it's stabilized. Sometimes you're working one joint at a time and or you're doing higher reps. So I call it the show for, aesthetic purposes, like you want to build bigger biceps or triceps, because contrary to popular opinion, one of the best ways to grow a muscle size is to actually isolate it rather than trying to count on it being worked along with other things like compound lifts. One of the best benefits of compound lifting is you can really condense your training. You can get a big systemic strength benefit, both from skill and central nervous system, but it's not great at growing individual muscles. So if you have muscles that are weak that you need to bring up to support your athleticism, or you have muscles that are weak and small that are hurting the way your physique looks, spend a little bit more time on the show portion. And a good example of a show exercise that I love to do is Nordic leg curls. It's a very functional, it's an exercise, a single joint, but there's a lot of tension in your hamstring, so it builds good capabilities with your hamstrings as well. But if you want to, other good show exercises for your hamstrings could be seated, lying, or standing leg curls, even Roman chair back extensions, things like that. So first of all, I'm just using this leg extension because I don't have GHD that's easy to film here. So you're gonna put your ankles underneath the pad, get a little bit of tension. I keep my hips bent a little bit at first because it makes it easier. Go down and get a good stretch. Use your hands out of the bottom to spring yourself back up. Tension, stretch, spring back up using your hamstrings. So those, 6 to 7 reps and I'm pretty tired. So that's a good strength stimulus, but I think hamstrings grow really well with more high tension, lower rep things. But other good examples of show type exercises obviously are dumbbell curls or leg extensions, lateral raises for your delts, things like that don't take a lot of energy. At this point in the workout, you should already be smoked anyway, and you're gonna want a little bit of a break to start to come down from that workout. And you don't want to be doing very complicated things that are ballistic in nature when you're already fatigued. So this is a good time to put those in the workout. And nothing I did here was revolutionary. It's a very common way that strength coaches structure the workouts, but people get very confused as to where to put the things in their own workouts and how to structure those and blend those together. So it's a very simple system that people can use. All they have to do is remember the 5 elements, slow, flow, go, grow, show, and plug the exercises in where they seem to fit best based on that. Judd Lienhard, Always Be an Athlete. If you like what you saw, make sure you like and subscribe. If you have any questions or you'd like to see content on something else, leave it in the comments, and I'd be happy to make a video about it.